Welcome to Hustle and Heart, where soulful strategy meets bold ambition. I'm your host, Edie Weintraub, and every episode we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to build places people love. From chefs shaping culture one meal at a time to developers dreaming up the next great neighborhood, this isn't just about real estate or restaurants. It's about connection, community, and the courage to create with heart. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Evan Snow, co-founder of Zero Empty Spaces. Evan, you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners how you are changing the world.
Amen. Well, I certainly appreciate the inclusion and invitation and the opportunity to share this story. And I think this will be a pretty good one because there's a lot of hustle and a lot of heart involved here. So I'm a very passionate arts advocate, community builder, and placemaker, now creative entrepreneur, born and raised in Broward County, Florida, where Fort Lauderdale is located. And I'm changing the world in our current iteration by activating vacant commercial real estate spaces to create affordable working artist studios so artists have space to create and collaborate affordably outside their homes. We've found that that's created a myriad of win-win-win benefits. With the first 33 spaces we've activated over the last 6 years across 4 states, with over 800 artists coming through the program. And we have truly seen it change hundreds of artists' lives thousands of times over.
And that brings me so much joy. And I'm sure you're a proud papa because of hearing those stories and helping to launch a lot of those artists in terms of exposure. So, quick kind of PS for everybody. Evan and I met because my sister is an artist in one of his spaces, and she was telling me about his experience. And she historically has been an art teacher, and she's just started to get launched. And what I really loved is that you require the residency so that anytime someone is around, you go into high traffic areas and someone is always creating. And sometimes I think, I'm sorry, all the time, I think that that part of it, that seeing that creativity in action is really that glue, that connection, that joy that really starts to help people see that space differently. So tell our listeners how Zero's Empty Spaces came to be. Where did it come from? How did you and your co-founder think that it's something that needed to be expressed in the built environment?
Sure. So art had a profound impact on both of our lives. My business partner was an early stage artist in a place in Midtown Miami. Some people might have heard of called Wynwood, which is arguably the street art capital of the world and has contributed largely to the redevelopment and revitalization of Miami. But we live in Broward County, about 45 minutes up the road. We really didn't have anything like that. So we were initially working to create platforms to highlight and showcase artists as a way to kind of give back and support these creatives that we were knowing, loving, and establishing relationships with. And initially, I don't know if you know this, Edie, but there's another great initiative, mega success story in Miami called Art Basel, the largest art fair in the world, $1 billion economic driver for economic impact for 1 week of art that's also contributed to the revitalization of Miami. We never had that either. We wanted to create something super unique for our community in Broward County, and we didn't want to do what everybody else did, doing an art fair in a tent convention center or hotel. So we initially started looking at the unique elements we had in Fort Lauderdale, full homes on the Los Olas Intercoastal Waterway System, the Venice of the Americas. We have a water taxi system. And, we just thought this could be a really interesting canvas platform to do a revolutionary art fair inside of vacant mansions that were for sale and make it only accessible via boat, called the Art Fair on the Water. And long story short, we started partnering with our local real estate board, and that had brokers, property managers, and developers saying, hey, could you do art in our commercial space? And fortunately, my business partner wanted to be a full-time artist, but he liked nice things, so he couldn't be a full-time artist. So he got into advertising and marketing, worked his way up the corporate ladder from agency world to being a marketing executive for the Westfield Corporation, one of the largest mall companies in the world, where he had developed vacancy management strategies and solutions for malls to drive traffic, attract and retain shoppers, keep feet in the street longer, create positive buzz, press, social media content. So this initiative kind of came out of that. We were leaving a meeting one day, saw all these for lease signs in Broward County that day. NPR article came out that we were one of the least affordable counties for housing. We thought, what if we could make this one of the most affordable places to create in? What if there was no more empty spaces, or better yet, what if there was zero empty spaces? And that was the inspiration behind it.
Thank you for so much for sharing that. And also the inspiration that you have just in your neighbor, Miami, just south of you. So we talk a lot about of soul over square footage. How do you decide which spaces are worth transforming and what makes one ready for art?
That's a good question. We only thankfully work with spaces that are offered or provided to us from property owners and developers that want to receive the benefit of having their space activated. This has been a largely a self-funded initiative. We never received a grant or a nickel of a donation to do this. We've done it all internally, so we have to be selective to your question and to the point. We do need the spaces to be up to code because we're self-funding it and we can't make permanent additions like adding an ADA bathroom to a space that doesn't have one for $30,000. We look for good bones. We're dealing in vacant space, so they're not always in the best condition, but we can clean them up, add lighting, add electrical outlets. Preferably, we look for spaces ground floor retail, first floor. We are starting to get into office buildings as well. But ideally, places that are 3,000 square feet plus that allow us to subdivide a large space into smaller individual artist studios with a modular divider wall IKEA style system we invented. That allows us to put enough artists in there to make the math work. And then we don't look for them or need them to be on Main Street or on the 50-yard line of the property, but ideally some space where even if there isn't foot traffic, where we see that there's potential that we could create some buzz. We've gone into multiple dead wings of malls to create that buzz and that traffic, and it has worked successfully. So really just up to code, ground floor retail, some visibility, doesn't have to be, the best, main street of all time. And then we'll kind of create the magic and the traffic and the buzz from there.
I'd love for you to share one of your success stories. I recall one, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice, where there was a space that had sit vacant for 5 years and you came in, you activated, there was a creative energy and like good juju in the space. And within a couple months, they leased that space. So am I getting it right? Do I recall correctly?
Those were our first two spaces on Los Olas Boulevard, our main street that runs from downtown Fort Lauderdale to the beach. Pre-COVID, there was 19 vacancies. He was asking $89 a square foot, which is quite a bit. And the first space we went into was vacant for 3 years. It was a former art gallery. We put a bunch of talented local artists in there. They all invited their friends, family, collectors, and the public to the grand opening, which the press thankfully covered very well with NPR, PBS, and the local media. So we had one of the widest attended grand openings of anything in the city's history, over 1,000 people spilling out in the streets. And then 3 months into that first space, the gentleman came in, said he liked the buzz and energy in the space, asked for landlord's number, signed a permanent deal. We're not brokers. It's part of the program to help get the spaces leased on the commercial real estate side, which we could talk to. And then the next space they moved us to was 888 East Los Olas, the former Levinson Jeweler space, which had a little bit of a checkered history from a Ponzi scheme that happened many years ago. And it was 5,000 square feet, had a bank vault in the middle, very difficult to lease, $89 a square foot. You're talking $100,000 a month probably to operate the space. We go in there, same thing. 3 months into it, positive buzz and energy, asked for landlord's number, signed a permanent deal. The concept was proven. That is on the real estate side. We have countless other success stories, but on the artist side, and I think your sister-in-law, we can speak to this, we've helped validate a lot of artists' career and elevate them. And we're in South Florida, so we have a lot of retirees. We've had countless grandmas and grandpas, seniors that have been painting at home 20, 30, 40 years, just as talented as the other artists, but they're creating in their second, third, fourth bedroom, garage, kitchen table. They find out about our program. They find out the barrier to entry is low. They find out we're inclusive. They come in, and then at their first event, they come crying to us and they tell us multiple times over, and it never gets old hearing it. Thank you so much. This is the first time I've ever been able to call myself an artist. This is the first time I've ever been able to step out of my house with my art. This is the first time that I just sold $3,000 of art on my first ever event. And, what's the price of that? We don't take any commission. Literally changing people's lives that were, once again, just as talented as the other artists that get accepted into the, known programs and residencies. But we pride ourselves on pairing the emerging mid-career and the established artists together versus those residencies are typically heavily juried, require a long CV, a resume, MFA, Master's in Fine Arts degree. So by breaking the barriers down, we've just found countless success stories. And that's when I say, when we say we've changed hundreds of artists' lives thousands of times over, those are just really scratching the surface, but ones we're proud to share. And then the last brief one, I think, as relates to your family member, just a safe space for like community, like tapping into community, providing like a space outside of the home where you can get away from your kids. You could have like a mental health break, you can meditate, you don't have to worry about the dishwasher or the whatever washer. And the way that we've been able to improve the quality of life for artists that are like, this is my safe space, this is where I come to get away from the monotony of life, and this is my tribe, this is my vibe, I'm here with 20 other artists. Those are just some of the easy success stories. We have countless others on our podcast and website you could look up later. We're glad to share.
Yeah, no, those are, I think to me, like the heart, the soul, the energy that you're creating a space for those artist creatives to come together. And I love that they're also so variable, right? Like you've got some folks that do paint, you've got different types of paint, you've got ceramics. I mean, there is no restrictions, right? Because even some galleries, they only have certain types of art on the wall or things like that. So I like that there's no limitation.
Amen. We appreciate that. We can't be everything to everyone. We do have to work within the zoning restrictions. But yes, for painters, for fashion designers, for sculptors, for people that do assemblage and collage and textile and low impact, we can't have metal work in a retail zone space. You can't have open flame, or spray paint or encaustic, but, it works for some. It doesn't work for all, but we do the best with what we got. And that's what we're doing.
No, I love that. So I think that your work redefines what's possible in the commercial real estate space. How have the conversations gone from the very beginning? Obviously, you're sharing kind of the rents that they were expecting. And obviously, I'm sure they're very happy to have had you activate it because it showed that space in a different light rather than either it's sitting empty and you can see inside the windows. I know more and more developers are putting a vinyl on the windows so that you don't see that it's vacant, but those things are fairly expensive. So how do you bridge the gap and how have you continued to have the conversation that you create this viable economic tool that brings in a different perspective and a different view of the space as you continue to grow?
Right. Great question. So while we're, obviously not in a position by working to keep the rents affordable for artists, which is the revenue, the proceeds that, underwrites and funds the program, we are able to provide significant value for property owners, cities, economic development officers, bids, business improvement districts, downtowns, because we negotiate a significantly discounted lease and licensing agreement with the property owner directly on a month-to-month basis until they get a permanent tenant, at which point we ask for a 30-day notice to vacate, to move the artist to the next available space, either with that owner developer or another owner developer. The space stays listed on the market as we just outlined and have been 33 of them, 23 of them have been leased. We have multiple, dozens of proven success stories of helping spaces get leased quicker. But on the economic side, we're able to, we take the utilities when requested, off of the property owner's P&L. So we're saving the money there. We provide our own insurance, which we found by doing this work, developers are telling us they're subject to excess insurance premiums when their properties sit vacant longer than 60 days because they're subject to increased maintenance and vandalism and all the things. So we save money on the insurance. We maintain, when asked to do so, the HVAC unit with the preventative maintenance contract. We're in the space daily. I can't tell you how many times that we've mitigated leaks and other issues that happen with vacant space because the property manager might only go once a month, once a quarter, once a year. So we're literally saving money on repairs. We're oftentimes improving properties by bringing in lighting or adding electrical outlets to give the artist access, but those electrical outlets stay. So, and then from the feel good, social good, community good aspect of it, the space is open, so it's supporting the neighboring tenants, the walkability of their plaza, development, shopping center, or whatever it may be. Closed doors don't generate positive press. You couldn't pay a PR firm to write a positive story, where here we're naming the owner, developer, and the stakeholders and the partners that bring us in. And the press, thankfully has been very, very generous to us, local, national, international, print, media, TV, radio, everything. There's millions of dollars in earned press value that we've provided. And in some instances, the owner and developer we were in a mall that had no tenants in the food court and had an opportunity when interviewed by the local business journal to say, oh yeah, we're glad to have zero empty spaces. By the way, we're looking for tenants and we'd be glad to incubate new aspiring culinary entrepreneurs. What's the value on that? There's a lot. While we don't pay market rent, and we generally don't pay rent, we generally get the spaces $0 month to month lease. While it's not generating anybody any good, we're providing tremendous amount of value in addition to the social media, marketing campaigns that we're doing. The artists are posting saying, come to my space at this location all the time. The events, the video recaps, the Google Maps, the SEO, it really is the gift that keeps on giving. We'd like to think it works for some, it doesn't work for all. But if it could work for Simon, Brookfield, JLL, and small independent owners and developers as well, it could work for anybody.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I was instrumental in bringing Smorgasburg to Atlanta. And so, what you're doing for artists, Gaston is doing for chefs and bakers, etc. We just had our media day last weekend, and we're going to be opening to the public in Atlanta on the 18th. So I'm very excited to have all that creative culinary energy come together. And I know that they're very particular about bringing in brands that are unique and special. I had a fried peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And well, I typically don't eat fried. It was delicious. Of course, I had to try it, but the energy from those operators was infectious. And I feel like that's synergistic with your artists and for people who are coming through and seeing that art in motion and wanting to know the story and being pulled in, and they're more likely to purchase it because they've met the artist, they've seen the art in action, and so it's just all of a sudden those storylines come together, and it's much more sticky.
And I happen to be a big fan of Smorgasbord, having seen it in Brooklyn and in Miami. And I know that there's been countless success stories there from taking empty land and making these opportunities available, where some of those culinary entrepreneurs end up now taking that platform and that opportunity to incubate their business, that then they either launch their own restaurant, food truck, whatever. So kudos to you. I think that's a great initiative. I look forward to checking it out next time I'm in Atlanta.
Absolutely. Well, you're overdue. I haven't seen you in forever. Let's make it happen. So
Amen.
I want to hear a little bit more about, and perhaps it's solely due to the artists, but I feel like every community has its own rhythm. So how do you align the rhythm of that community and the artists that are coming into your space for as you continue to expand?
That's a great question, and we could certainly talk about that in Atlanta, where we visited some spaces. We pride ourselves on not just the pairing of the artists at different stages of their career together, but these are all local artists of the community. One of the most interesting social experiment components to come out of this is that it's not just pairing the stages of their career, but pairing artists from the least expensive neighborhood to the most expensive neighborhood over the arts, where they all pay the same rent, they all did the same application process. As a result, and they're local to the community because they have to be able to drive there. That's really brought different members of the community together that would probably never communicate, never interact, and then their works are now being inspired by their other works. Their conversations are being influenced by friends, family members, and collectors when they come to the events, that they're now getting different purviews of different parts of the community. And we've seen incredible nonprofit collaborations and, potlucks and different events, just bringing people together to the table. But in many of the communities that we serve and activate, there's a lot of pride in the community. And some of them show that through their artwork. Some of them are very proud when given opportunity to speak on a panel discussion, on a podcast, or in a media interview, that they're able now to highlight and tell that as part of their story, as part of their voice, as part of their journey. So we're just glad to really support these local artists that, many of them are never going to get into a gallery. It's just, 99% of artists are never going to get into a gallery. Many of them are never going to get into media. We put Jillian on NPR, and on a podcast and on recap videos that still live on to this day, where people are like, oh, I know her. And it was actually a mutual yoga teacher friend of ours. So we're so glad to do this to support the local artists, because everybody starts somewhere. Everybody starts at ground zero. You see Kehinde Wiley and you see these people that made it, but they started somewhere, and everybody deserves that opportunity. And we're just glad to do that by activating spaces locally in their communities.
I love that. So help us understand a little bit more about how, artists, like you said, they struggle with visibility, the affordability. Would you mind sharing with us what the artists pay to be in a space at Zero Empty Spaces?
Sure. On average, we're building spaces now. 96 square feet. So they're 8 feet by 12 feet for an individual studio. There's common area, there's walkways, there's more space than that. So we're at about, on average, $3 per square foot. So about $300 a month. That's with the water, electric, tax, insurance, maintenance, everything included. We make it easy so they can apply, pay, show up, and paint. We don't take any commissions. So when because they're paying for studio, when the barrier to entry is low, then the artist can really focus on the artwork that they want to make, instead of sometimes when the barrier to entry is high, the artists have to make work to sell, which might compromise their artistic integrity. It is what it is. So we pride ourselves on, trying our best within this model by getting the spaces significantly discounted, doing the build out and the maintenance and the permitting and the signage and all the things we have to do. We didn't get into this to make the most amount of money possible, but we've developed a way to make this a sustainable win-win-win. And now that we have, thankfully, mall companies opening their portfolios to us across the country, we're excited to grow and scale this and eventually get some investment to really take it to the next level while still keeping it affordable and accessible for artists of all levels.
No, I think that's part of the joy, right? Like you said, even in markets that you've grown into, you're bringing in artists that are used to working in a certain neighborhood and you're mixing it up with artists that are working in a different neighborhood. And so just that connection, that growth, that conversation that you're starting just because they're in a shared space together, I think that is so. You've proven that creativity drives commerce. How are you measuring the impact? I would not say it's about like leases filled or art sold. I mean, tell me a little bit more about how you're seeing that ripple effect of the work that you and your team are doing.
All the above. There's different impact to different stakeholders. Obviously, the developers and the owners, they like to hear about the spaces getting leased. We've activated over 150,000 square feet of vacant commercial real estate. So to be able to accelerate the timeline of leasing by having the space being active and open daily, you don't have to wait on the broker. You don't have to call the for lease sign. So there is impact there. On the artist side, I mean, we've estimated, not everybody reports their sales, but we've generated at least over $1.6 million of economic impact just on sales alone from the artists that have taken part of the process of the program. We also economic impact, like pay the local utility company, pay the business tax receipt to the city and the business taxes, pay local vendors like the electrician and the plumber and HVAC maintenance company. So there's a lot of also impact within the local creative economy. For those of you that might not have heard this before, NEA reports, National Endowment of the Arts, for every $1 spent in the arts, there's a 9-to-1 economic impact into the local creative economy. So those artists, when they sell something, continue to go to the local art supply store and purchase their supplies. They can continue paying rent. They can continue buying coffee and groceries. They can continue paying taxes and all the things. So there is like countless, economic impact related success stories that, really just keep evolving and blowing our minds. But I would probably say, the lives change, not just the artists I mentioned, but even the community's lives that have changed by being able to discover artists or discover creative places. Haven't mentioned this term yet, third spaces, but it's becoming more of a thing. The spaces between work and home, you can only go to the coffee shop and the cafe so many times. So having this cool space we're hosting our monthly breakfast lecture series mini TED Talk tomorrow in one of our spaces. We host potlucks in some of the spaces. We host workshops and bring in speakers and, do sound bowls and sound healing and all types of things. Those are real tangible, not only success stories in the way that you're positively impacting and changing people's lives, but then I used to be a recruiter and they talk about attracting and retaining talent. We live in a really well-cultured place where there's a lot of things to do. People want to live places where there's cool stuff to do, and companies want to move their headquarters in places where there's cool things to do. And we know, we've been around, that through our work, we've contributed to the revitalization of certain communities to the point that it did bring in investment, not to us, but that companies made their headquarters there. They redeveloped properties, they bought properties, they moved employees there because there was art, culture, and things to do. So there's countless success stories. And the last one I would just mention briefly, The nonprofit collaborations have blown our mind. Not what we were envisioning starting this out, but giving the nonprofit a space, that comes organically via relationships with the artists or the nonprofits stumbling into the space during an event. The most notable, successful one we've had was a local, very noteworthy symphony, the Palm Beach Symphony, provided discarded instruments that couldn't be played any longer to our artists to embellish with their own artwork and style for a musical masterpieces a fundraiser where those instruments and artwork now was auctioned at the opening season event at the Kravitz Center, which is the top performing arts center in West Palm Beach in a very wealthy, affluent area, where 50% of the proceeds from those artworks went to support the symphony's education programs. 50% of the proceeds went back to the artists. This endless media coverage on that event. The gift that keeps on giving. We keep hearing now years later, oh, this person just bought one, that didn't sell at the auction. Really just success stories on success stories on success stories. And we're glad to continue creating these in the communities that we go to. And this is the kind of the gift that keeps on giving.
I mean, a lot of people call it the ripple effect, the domino effect. I mean, I think it's just that, that single drop, you don't know where it's ultimately going to end up. So I tell everybody, be good to one another. So I kind of feel like, you're building a model, but also a movement. You had briefly mentioned in your bio that you're moving into more placemaking. So is there something that you have up your sleeve, perhaps beyond zero empty spaces, that you wanted to expand upon?
Sure. Yes. Glad to. The first 33 spaces have been artist studios. And then, as you said, what are you looking for in the spaces? Well, Burger King corporate reached out to us and said they have 40 locations they don't have franchisees for. What can you do with it? Well, half the space is the kitchen, so it wouldn't make sense to put the artist in the kitchen. And it has all this working equipment and hood systems and all that. So we actually came up with a concept where we're going to pilot where we could find former kitchens that still have working equipment to do commissary kitchens for chefs, caterers, food truck operators and cottage-based businesses, as well as, kind of like a ghost kitchen component, which is, a really interesting pilot that we're working on. We're really excited to get into co-retailing for emerging brands and makers. The malls tell us they have so many people that want to come in. They can't commit to the entire space. They can't commit to 5-10 years, understandably. So by us giving them a retail incubation opportunity in a shared co-op environment with a shared POS, everybody's promoting. It's not just on that one person to drive the traffic to their space. We're really excited to launch that and bring in also some partners. Like we're working with Chase on financial literacy and education for our members and for our residents, which we're really glad to do. And then we are very excited. We made a relationship with Marriott, North America's food and beverage director. And he started, as he tells us, as a bartender, worked his way up literally all the way to the top of the corporate ladder. And now he wants to do mixology academies to train nightlife and hospitality workers while also supporting the Marriott hospitality pipeline, which has many flags in every location all over the world. So daytime academy, nighttime pop-up rotated branded bars where they can get their experience and get tips. And then the last one for now, we can't be everything to everyone, but we really want to get into crack this affordable housing situation, which is not just in South Florida, but everywhere. We did create a 501c3 called Spaces of Possibility, where we're ideally working to get spaces donated permanently in exchange for a tax deductible donation receipt or through philanthropic giving. So many kids inherit commercial real estate that, you see it's vacant 5, 10, 20 years. They don't want to maintain it. They don't want to pay property taxes on it anymore. So we could put their name on the building, have it be a dedicated space. And then if the zoning allows for it, or if we can get the zoning changed, making it affordable live work housing, even potentially purchasing or acquiring former, 2-story low-rise motels or multifamily properties, or whatever the case may be, that we can establish as permanent live work spaces for artists. That's kind of going to be the ultra legacy work, but those are, and the placemaking, just to round that out and to answer your question, I just got back from Placemaking Week Europe. They're very progressive over there. We're really now placemaking traditionally, you find a space, make it better than before. Mostly it was done in the public realm through parks and, activations, public art, parklets, pop-up stuff like that. So we're really focusing on not just creative placemaking, but we're coining a term of interior placemaking as space activators. And we're glad to collaborate and complement other placemakers, other community builders, other economic developers' efforts and initiatives to support them to make a bigger impact. We like to believe rising tides raise all ships. So we're just glad to do what we can with what we have, and see how it can change the world in the process, which, as we've kind of discussed, it already is doing so.
I love that. No, I think we're all stronger together. People ask me what my favorite color is, and I said, well, I like the rainbow because I like how all of them fit together. So I can't just pick one. It's like telling me to pick which child is my favorite. No, I have two boys. I love them both. They each have their own things that make them special, and so there's enough love to go around.
Amen. Amen.
Evan, thank you so much for sharing your creativity and your passion and helping us see that we should all take more time to slow down and enjoy the around us. Whether you're an emerging brand dreaming of your first brick and mortar, developer seeking to unlock hidden value, or a city leader planning your next great neighborhood, we're here to be the pixie dust that ties it all together. If this conversation sparked something in you, drop a comment or share this episode with someone who's ready to build places with heart because we need more we.
My name is Evan Snow, and I'm proud to be on the Hustle and Heart podcast, conversations with culture creators like you.